It wasn't easy to find adventure growing up, but my sister and I sure did our best. She was crazy. She'd run headlong into everything. I like remembering her that way.
Did you ever play with fireworks when you were a kid? Man, in my neighborhood, every 4th of July was a war zone. It was amazing.
When I proposed, I tried that whole hide the ring in her food trick, and like a damn sitcom, she almost swallowed it. I'm not gonna say that's why we broke up, but it sort of started the whole downward slide.
There were times back in grad school when I was so stressed, I almost wished I'd just get hit by a bus. Now I get what real stress is about. I miss being young and stupid.
Yeah, people say fish don't feel pain. That's bullshit to help them feel better about what they're doing to another animal. They thrash on a hook because it hurts. They're just too dumb to know what's happening. I fucking envy that.
Days like this, I wish my old soccer coach was still around. She had that whole stand and deliver thing going. She was the only person I ever met who actually wanted me to be myself.
My marriage didn't work out. I went out for a run one Saturday morning, and when I got back, I hope she's still okay out there, and that she's got someone baking cookies for her.
When I was a boy, I found a half-drowned kitten by the creek one summer. I spent weeks nursing it back to health. It didn't make it, and there went any fantasies I had of becoming a vet.
Big crowds would always give me trouble. Most times I'd do anything I could to stay away from them. Strange, but now I kind of miss it. Or maybe I just miss having the choice, you know? To engage or just to walk away.
The first person I saw get killed was this poor kid, probably not even 16. I'd have given anything for it to have been my deadbeat fucking father instead.
The first time a looter came at me, I didn't hesitate. Aim and fire, just like Mom taught me. I'd always thought killing someone would feel different than shooting a target, but when it's me or them, not so hard.
Sometimes I hear people ask whether it's fair when we survive, and our friends don't. Man, that's a stupid question. Death just happens. Fair's got nothing to do with it.
No matter what, my brother and I always had each other, and we both swore that would never change. And then along came a drunk driver, and my brother was gone. That was when I decided I could only rely on myself.
My mama died protecting us, just like when we were kids. I even saw her put a bullet in her temple, just so she wouldn't turn. I vowed right there to live, no matter what it took. I can't let her death be for nothing.
So the other day, I saw this one Zed who looked just like a guy I worked with back at Tartan Mart. I don't like burying my friends, but better dead than Zed, right?
You know who came after me first? It wasn't zombies. It was people who wanted my emergency supplies. I actually watched a few of them kill each other over who had the right to kill me for my stuff. It was really ugly to see.
Watch the guard, I told my buddy. I'll get the jewels, you just watch the guard. Instead, he starts shooting. Dumb shit got 30 to life. Did a nickel before he got shanked in the shower. All because he didn't follow the plan.
My parents always did the best they could for us. Even when money was tight, we knew they loved us. Thank God they died so long ago. If they'd turned, it would have killed me to see them try and hurt us kids.
My mom got diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer a few years ago. I was so angry at her for skipping her mammograms. But at least I got to make cookies with her one last time.
I used to believe that each of us was put on this earth for a reason. Then a zombie mailman killed my husband, and I had second thoughts.
I went through some tough times back when. Got so bad I could barely afford ramen. Of course, my dogs always got fed before me. Gotta have your priorities, right?
Hearing folks in the camp argue always reminds me of when my dad used to get really upset, usually over money. And his medical bills got pretty bad. God, I hate remembering him like that.
The first time I remember being heartbroken is when we lost in the playoffs. I was 12, and it was just the worst. I still can't believe the refs called that a fumble. We really should have won that game, you know.
I got sick a lot as a kid. never thought too much of it. Gotta stay home, hang with mama, pretty much a win-win. It wasn't until later that I realized how worried she probably was. It hurts to think about how much she hid to keep me happy.
They always say about your dream car, drive it like you stole it. I guess the guys who swiped my wheels during the apocalypse took that literally.
Every memory is sad now. My 8th birthday, Grandpa's present was awesome, and the stories my cousins told were so funny. But all those people are dead now. The happy parts only hurt worse.
You know, driving was more fun when it wasn't just about escaping the muertos. I remember flooring it sometimes just for the hell of it.
When my college roommate got really sick, I basically lived at the bar across from the hospital. Never visited him once. People didn't understand it, but that was as close as I could get. If I'd set foot in his room, I'd have lost it.
So one of my army pals gets his legs blown off by this IED, and what's he say? Nothing takes the smile from my face. Fucking Z chewed his lips off on day 1.
I pulled all kinds of rebellious shit when I was a kid. Drinking, smoking, sneaking out. I stopped once I figured out my mom wouldn't notice no matter what stunt I pulled. No point to it after that.
During my divorce, I thought that losing my family, my kids, was the worst thing I'd ever experience. Now I go through the same thing almost every week.
My dad and I could just sit and watch sports, sharing the silence. That's mostly what I remember about him. The silence.
It's hard to believe what used to upset me. Like, senior year, I tore my rotator cuff right before state fast pitch finals. I was so crushed I could barely watch the game. Now I'd give anything to have that memory.
I never went looking for any of my old grad school friends after the world ended. After watching my family turn, I just couldn't take another moment like that.
My worst Thanksgiving ever was the time we got a live turkey. Of course, it wasn't alive for long. Whatever you're imagining right now, it was worse.
At my last job, our boss had this big-ass jar of candy on his desk. We all fucking dreamed of throwing it at him. Instead, I got to throw it at the muerto that was ripping his face off. He didn't do shit.
There was nothing I loved more than dancing, but I gave it up. Life just got too busy. I thought I'd always have time. The songs in my head used to make me smile. Now they make me cry. There aren't any clubs. Hell, there's barely any music.
So the year before I got to middle school, I heard that music class let you pick an instrument and take it home. For months, I spent every waking moment getting ready to pick mine. That was the year that they cut the program.
I never felt old, not so long as I could keep doing the things I loved. Then my doctor told me my heart wouldn't let me fly anymore. I've felt like a geezer ever since.
One of the many things I used to worry about was money. Having enough, getting more, what I'd do if I ran out. When I think about how much time and energy I wasted on that, I get so angry at the person I used to be.
I saw a vacant lot yesterday. Reminded me of one of the construction sites I worked back in the day. Hard to imagine that we'll never build like that again.
This one time, to punish me, my mom threw away my entire movie collection. Jason, Freddy, all of them gone. Back then, I honestly thought that was the worst thing that could ever happen to me.
I had this crop of cannabis, okay? And I wasn't gonna let a zombie apocalypse keep me from harvesting my buds. But then, some asshole with a flare gun burns my whole damn crop trying to kill some Zeds. That's when I bugged out.
When I was a kid, I used to go to this ancient arcade every day after school. This place was a relic. But then the owner died, and they tore down the place a week later. Now that was a fucking tragedy.
My husband had to put down our son when he turned. And then when my husband got bit, it was my turn to take care of him. I owed him that much.
When my wife needed a new kidney, I paid a lot of money to make sure we didn't have to wait. She was furious. Wouldn't even take it. So she died, waiting on the damn transplant list to save her life.
Not long after everything went to hell, I had a run-in with an asshole who thought he could push me around. I didn't want to fight him, but then he shot my dog to prove he was a badass. I put two in his chest.
When Papa turned, in those early days, my family kept trying to convince me he was still alive. No one would believe me that he wasn't Papa anymore. I was the only one who got out.
We were so poor we couldn't even afford to go to my grandma's funeral. So we had our own, right there in the kitchen. Sometimes you just do whatever you can.
After the zombies showed, my buddy and I holed up. On day 5, he went out for supplies. Never came back. Knowing he was dead out there was horrible, but being completely alone for the end of the world, even worse.
So this guy comes into my bar, crying, and orders 10 shots, pounds them quick, and bolts. All I cared about was that he paid me. Man, he didn't make it a mile before driving off a bridge. I let a guy die because I didn't give a shit. Never again, man. Never again.
I still had 2 dogs when things went bad. I kept them around for a while, just the 3 of us, walking the earth. When I started getting really hungry, I had to send them away. I'd have never forgiven myself.
I remember when I finally got out of the city, I was driving past this car crash, trying desperately not to look. Then I saw a single tiny foot sticking out of the wreckage. I had to pull over and throw up.
I used to drop a buck in this one homeless guy's cup. Not every day, but when I had a little extra. Then one day, he was just gone. Sometimes I wonder, if I had more to share, would it have made a difference?
In the early days, I remember that the homeless mission was packed. No one wanted to be on the streets. But within a week, it was a ghost town. Every single one of our regulars was dead, turned, or just gone.
When you watch your friends and family die, it's easy to give up. To just turn off that switch that gives a shit. But that's not me. I say if we're still here, it's our job to save people. To put this world back together again.
People have tried to convince me that my wife is dead. That she couldn't possibly have survived all this. The only people I can mourn are the ones I know for sure are gone. It's how I stay sane.
I killed a man before I ever fought a zombie. He had a reinforced house, closets full of supplies. I had my family with me, and he wouldn't even let us in. I didn't have a choice.
One time I got into a fight with my boyfriend. He'd promised to get tickets for that year's Metal Brute Festival, but he forgot. I felt bad afterward, but I never apologized. A girl's gotta have her priorities, right?
We had a lot of happy times together, my wife and I. Our friends called us the perfect couple. Things got a lot less perfect after the diagnosis.
It wasn't easy for me to get pregnant with my daughter. So many lonely doctor visits, so much disappointment. You can't get used to hard times. But that struggle worked out in the end. So maybe this one will too.
I was about to take a vacation before all this. Just me and my cousin. We always took trips together. We just picked Jamaica for our next one. Now she's gone, and who knows if Jamaica's even still there.
I called my tia Elena from school 2 weeks before she died. Promised her we'd go to the bookstore together during Christmas break. I don't know why I can't get over that we didn't get to do that.
I miss beer, you know? Especially that good shit with the dry hops and the nice fruity nose, man. Hey, don't judge. But now I don't care how skunked it is. I'm drinking what I find.
My first dog taught me a lot about responsibility. Feeding him, brushing him, helping him when he was sick, and burying him. That dog taught me that you have to suck up your grief and keep going, no matter what.
Once, when I was learning to bake, I grabbed a tray without putting on an oven mitt. I got a little scar to this day. That scar helps remind me to take time and make sure you follow all the important steps.
My best friend lived for basketball, dreamed of going pro. One practice, he twisted something. Doc said to stay off of it. He didn't listen. 5 minutes into the next game, his knee basically exploded. Sometimes having a dream is dangerous.
Most people think about teaching their kids to drive, right? Well, I always wanted to teach mine to pilot. That was a tough dream to let go of.
I had dreams of becoming a famous athlete once, but that all ended when I got hit by a car. 12 years old, and my world had ended. You know, I never thought your world could end more than once. Makes me wonder how many more times it can happen.
The day I found out my brother wasn't coming home from his deployment, now that was a bad day. Any shit we get hit with now, it can't possibly be as bad as that.
My buddy and I were always pranking each other, so I seriously thought he was just messing around with me that day. His kid sister gave him the Heimlich just in time, but oh, he was pissed at me for like a whole year.
So I'm racing with a buddy, running reds like they're not even there. I mean, I souped up this car myself, so she is flying. And then I hit this old lady at a crosswalk. I didn't stop or nothing. Sometimes I still wake up screaming.
I remember trying out for our school production of Les Mis and being laughed off the stage. Still stings. Isn't that ridiculous? It used to be my favorite musical. Now I can't even bring myself to hum it.
My older brothers took me camping one time. It was fun until they pretended to forget me in the woods. It was probably less than an hour, but I was so terrified. I must have yelled at them the whole way home.
You know what I missed most? Game night. I guess fun is kind of a low priority these days. Plus, there aren't that many people to play with.
They say you can't run away from your problems, but I used to travel all the time, and believe me, you can. Sure, eventually you come home and the shit all catches up to you, but sometimes even that little break is all you need.
My best friends and I, we used to do everything together. Shopping, movies, dancing, everything. A week before the world ended, we had a fight. It was so stupid. But then I got busy at work and I never saw any of them again.
People say this world can be cruel, but I think they're forgetting about high school. During my brief time as a goth girl, I saw at least one friend get beaten up every week. I guess black lipstick was too scary.
I lost track of most of my family, even before the Muertos came. Sometimes I wonder if they made it, or if they at least went out together.
I only did one painting I ever thought was any good. A sunset filled with golden yellows and fiery reds. So good. The next morning at breakfast, I spilled a whole cup of coffee across it. Nothing lasts.
Destiny is a tricky thing. If you believe in it, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. Trust me, I know.
I was halfway through renovations on my house when someone broke in and stole all of my new copper pipes. We talk about how good it was before the zombies came, but people being shitty to each other is nothing new.
I haven't felt this bad since the crash. Senior year, high school. Even at the time, part of my brain was telling me I shouldn't get into that car. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to listen.
Huh. I wonder what my house looks like now. I ran the neighborhood from that place, man. But Papa made some bad mistakes, and we lost that place. Yeah. Sometimes one mistake can ruin everything.
I came close to losing my taste for gardening after my mom died. It was kind of our thing, you know? But I kept taking care of the plants around her grave. I think that actually helped me get through it.
This one time I rushed a shot and winged a deer. It made a run for it, and then I heard the howling. Wolves tore the shit out of the poor guy in front of my eyes. After that, I always took my time and went for the headshot.
Some days I wish we still had meetings going, if you know what I mean. First time I killed someone, I came way too close to taking a drink. And it doesn't get any easier.
Not everyone appreciates having someone around who likes to plan things. My little sister, for instance. We'd get into huge fights over the crazy whims she acted on. We weren't even talking to each other when things went bad.
I always thought I'd be able to make someone happy. Unfortunately, fear of rejection can be a powerful motivating force.
My grandparents grew up in the Depression. and I really inherited that mindset. No matter how much canning she'd done in the fall, my grandmother was always sure they'd starve come winter.
You know where I learned the value of hard work? My mother. She was a lazy drunk and the only parent we had. Us kids kept the house clean ourselves, kept each other fed and safe. It wasn't easy, but we all learned to work.
You know, when I was a kid, this one day I left my bike unlocked outside of a tartan mart. Man, losing something always stings more when you know it's your own damn fault.
So we're all hiding in my house, doors locked and windows barricaded, when this family shows up wanting inside. Then the zombies showed up. They tried real hard to get inside, but you just can't kick down a reinforced door.
When a kid looks up to somebody, like I looked up to my sister, he thinks they're indestructible. Even after she ate a bullet, it didn't make any sense that she was dead. It still doesn't make any fucking sense.
Times like these, I wish I weren't such a hyper-competitive asshole. Maybe I'd be more supportive or something. But if it's kept me alive this long, maybe I should be thankful.
When the world started getting scary, I just locked my doors and started baking. Tried to lose myself in it, I guess. I must have gone through every cake and cookie recipe that my mom ever taught me. Didn't help.
So I used to work as a waiter. One day, the big boss man came in, sat down in my section. I figured now was my chance. Instead, I tripped and launched hot soup all over their table. I was fired on the spot. Couldn't pay my bills for 2 months.
I had a signed first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, right? I treated it like gold, of course. Plastic covers, locked frame, the whole deal. And even with all that caution, I still lost it when the house caught fire.
I worked a bunch of jobs back before. Some good, some bad, but most of the time, I just felt like I was wasting my life. Not anymore. Nothing we do feels like a waste. Maybe it's because now I know how valuable life really is.
When I was a kid, one of our dogs ran away. The poodle. Yappy little bastard. I thought I hated that dog. But I was broken up for days. Until he wandered back into the yard, barking and whining like he'd never been gone.
Believe it or not, there was a time when I wasn't afraid of spiders. But then I got bit by a black widow and spent 6 weeks with an infected hand. So, I don't know, I think that one's pretty reasonable.
One time, I went up against this cocky little Cuban fighter. You're just a kid, really, but game as hell. I mean, he had a future, you could tell. I ended that with one lucky punch. His kid was ringside. I saw his dad just, crumple. I hung up my fucking gloves right then.
I remember the last time I prayed. I was 12 years old, and my grandma had just had a stroke. I prayed for her to make it. She didn't. I never set foot in a church again.
For the longest time, I ignored the news reports. I just flipped channels until I found something with Groucho or Bob Hope. But I guess you can pretend that horrible things aren't happening for only so long.
I was never much into fashion as a kid. My best suit was a white 3-piece my mother bought me because I liked that disco movie. Yeah, I got beat up a lot.
I saw the last movie that ever ran at our theater. A final screening for the regulars, after the quarantines began. But then we lost power during the last reel, and poor Dorothy never made it home.
When I think back to who I was, I just think, seriously, God, why spare me? I was so shallow. I don't even think I was even very nice. Well, maybe I'm dead and this is purgatory. That'd make more sense.
I used to think we could solve anything with science. There was no problem we couldn't figure out. These days, I'm not quite so confident about that.
Yeah, I robbed a few places back in the day. It was a rush, man. Almost too good. But then your amigos, they start going away. Some for years, some forever. Not as much fun.
When I was in high school, I kind of stole a car, just to do some joyriding. I got caught, of course. My dad was so disappointed. But come on, you can't teach a girl to hotwire a car and then not expect her to try it.
So this one birthday, I got a Doberman puppy, Kojak, happiest dog. But then he got too big and I had to take him back to the pound. I'd never seen eyes so desperately scared and confused. Well, not until the first time I saw some dude getting eaten by the Z's.
I used to be part of this GED program for inmates. Some of them are even kids I taught in class. I always blame myself for not keeping them in school, for not nurturing them enough. This was just one way to try and fix it.
We traveled a lot when I was a kid. Driving through places like this, I always wondered why you'd live here. But you don't always get to pick where to make your stand against the world, do you? You just dig in and do your best.
You remember what it was like when you got fired from a job? The first day you were back on unemployment? These long, empty days are kind of like waiting to get hired again. Except it's never gonna happen.
This one time, I'm trying to tell my dad a joke, but I keep laughing before I can finish it. He got so pissed he actually walked out on me, before the drinks even got there. A buddy of mine was in the Army. 2 tours, dodged every goddamn bullet. The week she's gonna come home, her entire family dies in a car crash, and somehow she picks up the pieces and keeps going.
I was never good at saying yes, sir. Probably why I didn't do well holding down jobs. I spent so much time at the unemployment office, I think some people thought I worked there.
By the time it got real bad, I was on the road all the time, driving all day, bunking in rundown motels at night. One time, I ran into the night attendant, and I had to put him down. It was ugly. But I ended up sleeping like a baby.
Every time I would ask my parents if we could go camping, they'd shut me down the same way. I grew up poor, and now that we have a nice house, you want us to pretend to be homeless? For fun?
I joined the Navy right out of high school. I wanted a place where I could get away from the bullshit. And 2 years in, I realized that the bullshit was exactly the same, just on a boat with guns.
I was such a maniac when the world started falling apart. I mean, I hit the ground swinging, chasing zombies down the street. Eventually, some folks convinced me I didn't have to go all out all the time. Helped me back from the brink.
Every time my dad caught me doing something reckless and stupid, man, he'd put me through hell. Yeah, and it was bad, but I tell you, living through that was a damn sight easier than the world we've got now.
I saw this fight going down one night behind the bar. 6 guys against 2, so of course I jump in to help the 2 guys. Turns out they were just a couple of skinheads there to make trouble. I didn't make any friends that night.
When I was on the inside, this crazy dude poked out his eyes so he wouldn't have to look at the shit around him anymore. I mean, fuck that. How are you gonna kick a problem in the ass if you can't look it in the fucking eye?
I had a friend that would come to rallies with me, always with the same violence is not the answer sign. Cops hit him so hard the last time, he was still in a coma when the Zeds showed up.
After the 3rd time I snuck off to an R-rated horror movie, my mom tried to teach me a lesson by cutting off all my hair. I was so mortified to go to school the next day, but within a week there I was watching teenagers get slashed up again.
Our honeymoon was supposed to be a flying tour of Europe. I had a little 2-seater, just room for us and luggage. A year after my fiancée died, I took the trip by myself. She would have loved it.
I got in trouble a lot for fighting when I was a kid. It's just no slack for boys will be boys when you're a girl. A boy would tease me, I'd shut him up, and then I'd get in trouble for starting it. Every damn time.
Man, I try to be brave, you know, but I never had anything on my little sister. I so wish she were here with me. But she died. Cancer, years ago. Just goes to show you, live while you can. No point in waiting for tomorrow.
Every 4th of July, some dumbass in our neighborhood would get hurt setting off fireworks. Never failed. Yeah, we'd laugh about it, but now I remember how sad their moms would be when the ambulance showed up.
I took this road trip once, spur of the moment, and I hit a deer like 60 miles away from anywhere. The car's totaled, won't even start. I'd be dead if not for the go bag I always kept in the trunk.
I had this partner in crime who'd help me out on the occasional strong-arm job. He thought with his muscles, not his mind. Want to know why he's not here now? Because these days, you don't use your head, something's gonna bite your ass.
Growing up poor sucked. No matter what it was, there was never enough of it. I learned I could survive on a can of beans for 2 weeks. So when our can opener finally broke, we were just plain fucked.
I hate this feeling. It reminds me of sitting at the table at 2 a.m., stinking of cigarettes, almost crapped out. I'm sick of feeling like a loser. I don't give a shit about the odds. We're gonna beat these fucking Z's, damn it.
As a little kid, my dad would only let me watch old Hollywood movies, so I thought they were contemporary. Finding out Judy Garland was dead was like finding out Santa wasn't real. I didn't speak to my parents for weeks.
So I'm working the fryer when some dumb shit spills hot oil all over himself. Holy fucking shit, I will never forget the screaming. But the really fucked up part? The smell made my stomach rumble, man. I went vegetarian after that. For like a week.
My wife and I split up a few months before all this started. I keep thinking she's still out there somewhere, alone. If I knew that this whole zombie thing was going to happen, I think I would have tried harder to make it work.
After everything fell apart, I had to quit fast food cold turkey. At first, I thought it'd be tough. But after I found a couple of rotting corpses in a walk-in freezer, it got a lot easier.
I grew up in the country, which is supposed to make you immune to sentimentality about livestock, right? The first time I found out what was going to happen to our 2 turkeys, I cried for days.
I had a boyfriend before all this. A guy from high school. We lost touch in college, but later on we met again, fell in love. I was just about to propose when I found out he couldn't stand camping. That was a deal breaker.
I used to have this nightmare about being buried alive, clawing at the coffin lid with no one to hear me. Now I have nightmares about other things clawing their way out of the grave.
You gotta make your plans, sure. But you also gotta know that they just plans. Me? I had this whole new life plan for myself. Before all this shit started going down.
Growing up, we lived in some really sketchy apartments. Bugs all over the place. One winter, I ended up with lice. Mama didn't have time to wash my scalp and pick it clean, so she just shaved me bald. I froze my full head off that winter.
I never really knew my father. He died when I was young. But I felt like I knew him through the stories that my mama told me. She always painted him in a better light than he deserved. Sometimes I wonder if the stories were better than the real thing.
One of my soldiers was a war hero. He came back and received more decorations than a Christmas tree. When I found out he'd pulled some sick shit overseas, it damn near killed me. But I court-martialed him anyway. I had to.
You know how some folks hit the bottle when things get bad? I did that, but I always picked the nastiest stuff I had on hand. I figured that way I wouldn't ruin the good stuff with all those shitty memories.
You know, I used to be a huge baseball fan. Last time we tanked in the playoffs, I was crushed for a month. Yeah, I guess tragedy isn't what it used to be.
One time, our camp counselors didn't do a head count. My brother got left behind at the lakeside. It took 2 days to find him. Now, I would have loved it, but he had nightmares for weeks, and he never went camping with me again.
My first girlfriend's father threatened to kill me if he ever saw me around his precious little girl again. Considering the baseball bat he kept by his bed, I figured I should just cut my losses. I still miss her.
I used to be an exterminator, you know? I'd go into a house, kill the bugs, then move on to the next house. Kind of like what we do now. Only back then the bugs didn't try to eat you. This shit wears me out, bro.
The worst thing I ever saw, before all this happened, was this awful car accident. I still remember the blood on the concrete. Now it doesn't even break top 10.
Ironically, I wasn't angry at the end of the world. It was the new leaf I was looking to turn. The problem was, Under all those leaves were bodies, and some of them were my fault.
When you have a firefighter married to an EMT, there's gonna be a lot of stress bouncing around in that marriage. I can't believe all the time we wasted fighting over stupid shit because we couldn't admit we were just two scared kids.
You ever feel like we've died and gone to hell? Thing is, I can't figure out what I did to get here. I lived such a boring life before all this. Work, home, work, home. I wasted all my chances to sin while they were still around.
I always hated that my parents kept a gun in the house. It made me feel like they'd failed their own principles. Guess I owe them an apology. Sometimes principles take a backseat to reality.
I've been on the outside my whole life. Even when I had a crew, I was shit for making friends. Now it's like the whole world fell to my level. Making friends can get you killed, so don't even bother.
I used to love going to the movies, especially the really big ones. I'd buy tickets early so I wouldn't miss opening night. I had 6 tickets in my pocket the day the world ended. 6 movies I already paid for, and now I'll never see them.
If it hadn't been for my laptop, the one I spent a year saving up for, my dream of being a DJ never would have come true. At my 3rd gig, I spilled coffee all over it. That was when I learned always get the fucking warranty. Fuck!
I found an old hair clip the other day, just like my wife used to wear. I remember finding one of them in my car, months after she left. I lost it. Big time.
When I was 12, I was riding with my mom when she hit a deer. Way out in the middle of nowhere, nobody to call. Mom said we had to put the deer out of its misery, only, well, she couldn't. So I stepped up. I did it for her as much as for the deer.
I miss my friends, even the stupid ones. I miss getting them out of silly trouble like ex-boyfriends and bar fights. Kills me that I couldn't be there for them. Not a goddamn one of them.
My last day, one of my crew is giving mouth-to-mouth to a victim. And just like that, the guy wakes up and bites my buddy's face off. Welcome to the fucking apocalypse, right? If you're helping somebody who's down, check for a pulse first.
I used to bring flowers into the local elder care community. Yellow begonias were always the favorite. But every time it was like they'd never seen me before. It got pretty hard to come back after a while.
I enjoyed cooking for friends. It didn't seem like a big deal, but they were always impressed. And it was a nice change of pace from cooking for one.
My last day with the Peace Corps was harder than my first. I knew I'd made a difference, but I felt like I barely made a dent. And I felt so guilty, like I was just walking away.
I've always liked helping people. Family, friends, random strangers. It's just who I am. Of course, almost everyone I ever helped is dead now. I try to believe I still made a difference.
You know, I spent some time working at an animal shelter once, taking care of stray cats. Unfortunately, it wasn't one of those no-kill shelters. Those were bad days.
I was gonna sing a dirge at a friend's funeral. I'd sung in front of crowds before, so no big deal, right? But for some reason, I got the giggles and I just couldn't stop laughing. Everyone was so upset I just had to leave. I felt like shit.
My parents were real outdoorsy, doomsday prepper types. First time they took me camping, they told me the world was gonna end. Kinda ruined the s'mores.
Man, I fucking love the freedom of the road. Nobody telling me what to do or when to do it. Just me and my bike. Of course, the flip side of that is the fucking solitude. Sleeping under that big sky full of stars, you realize just how alone we all are.
Every time my son experienced a new disappointment, it was like I was feeling it for the first time myself. Lost toys, bad grades, mean kids at school. I was always right there crying alongside him.
I always believed that succeeding at sports was as much about skill as it was about effort. Unfortunately, my only real skill was tries really hard.
When I left home for college, my father told me, if you leave, don't you bother coming back. I look back on what I learned, and my head knows that I made the right decision. But my heart still regrets it sometimes.
I'm glad I was single when all this happened. My mama hated how I played the field. She called it sinful. But really, if I'd had more people to love, I'd only have more people to mourn. I'm better off this way.
During college, I tutored this one girl, physics. She struggled, but eventually I could see she was turning the corner. Then her mom got sick, and she had to drop out to help run the family restaurant. I never saw her again.
You remember times when you had to do shit that, I don't know, just wasn't you? Man, I've seen abuelas look at me in ways I will never shake.
I knew a little freckled girl named Gina. I called her Spots, even though she hated it. Other kids laughed, so I kept it up. Kids called her that all through school. In her yearbook, everyone signed to Spots. I just wrote, "Dear Gina, I'm so sorry."
So when I was a kid, we struggled. Hard. Sometimes we couldn't pay for electricity. Empty fridge, no lights, no TV. But our stove? That shit was gas, and gas was cheap. That stove was our fireplace and our water heater.
Back before the world went to shit, I had a night when my house burned down. Did I ever tell you about that? These days we can't get attached. But back then, losing your home was almost like losing a family member.